It's a brand new set, and with that comes the age-old question, what is the best legendary board that I can play so I can dominate my opponents and win everything? And I'm here to show you today what is the strongest comp in the game currently, which is Varus Fast 9 Legendaries. Okay, it's the strongest comp if you're not cheating by playing things like artifacts on some reroll composition. In this episode of In Too Deep, we're gonna hop on board with the Fast 9 specialist himself, K3 Soju, and find out what is the best Fast 9 comp and how do we get there. Here's a quick overview of 9-5 Varus. 9-5 is just a terminology in Chinese TFT where it just means level 9 and playing around 5 cost. So the 9-5 Varus is playing around Varus, Twisted Fate, Zyra, and Braum. And then you just kind of splash in a bunch of support CC utility units that are really important. Varus is always going to be your primary carry, and his best in the slot is Spear of Shojin and Infinity Edge. The third item that's really good is Striker's Flail, but you can do a Deathblade, a second Infinity Edge, a Giant Slayer. It doesn't really matter. And it's a little bit hard sometimes to get like all the perfect items. So just don't be too greedy with it. Just slam whatever you can get. Zyra is the example here as the duo carry, but in reality, you can also duo carry Twisted Fate because Twisted Fate is your inevitable scaler. Varus is about high burst. He shoots an arrow, does a lot of damage to the back line. And Twisted Fate and Zyra are mainly cleanup to make sure that you can just finish him off so that Varus isn't wasting a lot of his arrows. The main tank in this composition is Cassante, and you're going to be wanting to have Cassante have Unstoppable. This one is probably his best one by far because with Unstoppable, Cassante ends up running into the enemy backline, and then when he dies, he revives with All Out and then starts aggroing onto the enemy carries, which can be really clutch, especially with Varus and Twisted Fate hitting a bunch of the backline units. So don't get baited into putting items on Jarvan, Braum, or Swain. Cassante is definitely the tank of this composition. The best opener to play around is usually around a Gnar opener because it just, well, one, connects to snipers and the Wraith pretty easily, so just really easy to keep that Gnar in, but also because he's just really versatile at holding the Rage Blade and items for Varus. So definitely the best opener to think about. But then comes the really important question of what happens if I don't hit these units? How do I play more flexibly? What are some ways I can interchange, and who are the essential units I need to keep? I think these 6 units are the core 6 units of the composition that are pretty much non-negotiable. I think you really want to throw in all of these if you can. Varus is the damage dealer and the focus of this comp. Cassante is the tank. Braum and Gnar tie in synergies really nicely, and Braum is just really good late game for not just, of course, maybe holding items and dealing damage, but his displacement is super swingy in the late stage of the game, especially in this meta where there's a lot of solo frontline, right? You look at the tier list, and there are a lot of compositions like, you know, frontline Udyr. If you can get like a Vow on Braum and throw Udyr before the Titans gives him CC immunity, you might just win the fight like that. Janna is a protector that ties for Cassante, and you definitely want protector in because that gives him more tankiness. But she's also a strategist that links to Jarvan. And from there, the other 3 units are pretty easy to understand. You go for the 2 other Crystal Gambit units, and you have a Bastion that ties in with Braum. And then you have Twisted Fate, who's just kind of independent. Crew does not matter very much here. So much so that, you know, we don't even have Ziggs. I guess we could throw in Ziggs and C tier here, but he's not that important. But if you don't hit these other units, you have to think about who is my primary carry and who's my duo. And a lot of times your primary is going to be Varus, but your duo could, for example, be Gwen. You could have Gwen hold the Zyra items, but Gwen doesn't have like 6 Sorcerer and the Soul Fighter, so you probably want to put some actual AP on her. And then you would tie in the Soul Fighter through Xin Zhao, who is a Bastion that goes with the Braum, or maybe you don't hit Braum because, you know, you can't hit Braum. You can tie in the Xin Zhao with Swain, and Swain's a Sorcerer that connects back to Gwen. Maybe you hit Lee Sin, and he's an Executioner, and he ties in with Ryze because he's a strategist as well. Now, all of a sudden, maybe it's like Twisted Fate, Lee Sin, Ryze, Janna. Then you can throw in Crew for a little bit more strategist, and that's another way you can stall out because you didn't hit the Varus. You also can just play for Edgelord. Volibear actually uses these items as well. So Infinity Edge, Striker's Flail, and Volibear. Tie in the Bastion with Shen, with the Braum, and you get the Edgelord, and you have a nice little package of 4 Luchador, Edgelord until you get to the Varus as well. So these are just some ideas to try to play around Fast 9, but at its core, the 6 most important units are this top row. So just always stand by that and try to mix and match whatever you can until you can get to Varus, or you can get to some of these other carries like Twisted Fate and the Zyra. Let's hop on board with a replay featuring K3 Soju, where we are on gold subscription, which is an encounter that gives you a lot of gold. So this is one of the good ones to consider a Fast 9 with. Looks like our early drop is a Jace with A tier, and this is something pretty powerful to play around. As you guys might know, Jace Caitlyn is one of the best reroll comps in the game right now, and it is dominating at all levels of play, especially with an artifact. So you are very much incentivized to try and play around the Jace. Plus, he has the Battle Academia start, so I don't anticipate him to sell anything. You could probably just, hold the shop and see what happens here. Okay, Soju does end up getting 2 more 3 costs, but in order to make 10, he has to sell Jace, which I don't think is worth it because then he gives up the out to play for Jace for the Battle Academia line. So I think it's worth holding on to. And that's a tougher call to make in the moment, but I think that's correct. He ends up also testing his power up to see if he can get something like over 9,000, see if he can get the scaling Jace. But Star Student is a pretty basic good one for Jace because it ends up just giving him a ton of damage. And the way that potential scales gives him more sparks, which could end up doing a lot of damage to all the targets onto the board. All right, let's talk about his augments here to start things off. Escape Velocity is for crew reroll, and with no crew units whatsoever and no crew items, it's just untakeable here. Hustler is an augment that you might think could be good for pushing levels, but it actually caps how far you can push because you can only get 3 gold at the start of each round, which might sound like not that big of a deal, but that's 10 gold per stage that you're capped in terms of like what you can make if you're maxing your gold. And that just adds up over time. Hustler, as a result, is much better for like pushing for level 6 early on stage 2, level 7, level 8, and then staying on 8 for a while before you're able to get to 9. So in reality, he could take Hustler, but it's not going to be for a fast 9 if he does. Hustler is much more for like the safe top 4, fall off late game type of approaches. Pyromaniac is also something he could take. It actually has good synergy with Shojin because Shojin gives you mana per attack, and Rub Buff makes you attack faster, and it gives you some anti-heal with burning, which is good. And right now in the current meta, I think you just always need a source of burning. It's just really important because a lot of front lines are just going to heal a lot. But the thing is, red buff itself is not that amazing of an item, and this buff to increase his damage is actually quite negligible. It only gives you a little bit, like a couple hundred extra damage at most, which is not really that much in the big picture of things. So he holds Pyromaniac, and he has options 1 and 2, and he has Raining Gold and Time Skip. The value of Raining Gold is okay. I would say that this is probably the bar of which good econ augments should be clearing. Like, I think Raining Gold is mediocre, but if you're better than Raining Gold, that probably means you're a solid econ augment. Because, the 1 gold per turn is all right. I mean, it's not bad. But the value of Raining Gold is that the 8 gold now helps you make an interest point and hold your units, which is really valuable. Except Soju already has made 10 gold, so the value of Raining Gold is even a little bit lower than usual. This actually makes the value of Time Skip more desirable because then he's mixing gold and EXP because he's already getting the interest threshold. So it's a really good mixture of super boosting his economy as opposed to just a lot of the same thing. And Time Skip right now is 28 versus the 11 gold that you would get by the time this kicks in. And so it's a bigger immediate burst of EXP. We're playing 1-star Jace alongside 1-star Battle Academia, so it's okay at Time Skip from now while we focus on getting really good items for Jace like a Stairs Gauge or a Bloodthirster. Okay, let's fast forward, and it looks like Soju is going to pick Time Skip and slam the Shojin onto the Jace, which I actually think is a pretty good move. I think it's like an item that he knows that he can play around. It's very versatile. Pretty much, everybody wants mana generation. So Shojin is just really good. Plus, if he's going to commit to the Caitlyn Jace anyways, he knows that he can make that and put it on Caitlyn later on. Let's take this opportunity while we're just basically AFK to scout other people in the lobby. So we have Cluttered Mind, and we have 2-star Gnar, 2-star Neferi with a bow and a cloak. That's pretty open-ended. It could be anything. We have Patient Study with Sorcerers being held, so maybe leaning towards AP line. We have Luchador and Heavyweight with Wandering Trainer, kind of heavily incentivizing us to go into some kind of Mundo board or maybe just play around the 4 Luchadors. We have a Prodigy Crest, so there's going to be at least one person holding Battle Academia units. We have a Calculated Loss board holding a bunch of Sorcerers, so it's probably going to be leaning towards playing around AP as well. And then finally, we have a Thorn-Plated Armor with a Rage Blade, but this player is not leveling, so this person could be thinking about playing Crew, for example, because they have Malphite 2 with a Bramble Vest, and that's one of Malphite's best items. Looks like Soju actually won 2 fights and got 1 loss, which is actually really good, all things considering, because by winning those 2 fights, there's almost like not much downside of whether or not he was going to like not have any access to shops, and now he's going to get to level 6. Takes another sword here because he knows that the sword items are both simultaneously good for the Jace Caitlyn line as well as the future Fast 9 line that we know he's going to play into. And again, we're sort of cheating knowing that he's going to go into Fast 9. It's more about identifying when he recognized he could go to Fast 9 and how he pivots his strategy into playing for that version of the board instead of just staying at 7 and rerolling. His level 6 board, basically just buy your shop and play your best synergies, which is 3 Bastions and Prodigy, so very clean. I think if I were to nitpick, I think Lulu might be a little bit better than the Xin Zhao's, just so you can get a little bit of utility, like Burning Wounding, or maybe you can play Kog'Maw for some of the Sunder and Dread. But not that big of a deal. I think that's just like a really, really small detail. Finds an early Karma in his shop at 2/6, but I think the problem is he actually bought already another sword off the carousel, and sorcerers are a composition that has trouble actually using more than one sword. The second sword usually goes into like an Edge of Night, and that's for Gwen, or you just end up making something like Giant Slayer. But everything else is very favoring a bunch of physical damage, like Deathblade, Infinity Edge, Stairs Gauge, Bloodthirster. Those are all things that you don't really care very much about. So this is probably just going to be something that he rents. Maybe he thinks about it in case. Okay, he already sold it, but it's just something that you don't really think about unless you actually have like the items. Not to mention, I think some other people are like very much leaning into sorcerers, like the Calculate Loss player, for example, and maybe some other players as well. Actually, this player that had Slam In looks like it's holding Malzahar pair with a Striker's Flail. That person looks like they're prodigies. Yes, this is the sorcerer player. Okay. So I think Soju knows like, let's just not contest. Even though I hit the Karma, which is, very, very lucky if you're trying to play into Sorks. Now it's not the angle to play it, even though we have a Shojin. But he has very good discipline to withhold there, because I think some people would get completely baited and feel like, oh, well, I should play because I have the sorcerer line and, I'm doing so well. All right, 4 wins on stage 2 is a pretty good start to the game so far, given that he has an Econ Augment. What is this person win streaking with? They have Stoneplate, Gnar. They might be thinking about Ashe, surprisingly, because they do have the Gnar 2 in the AD opener. But we'll figure that out later. So you're not going to even bother with any of the sorcerers in his shop. Gets a bunch of gold. Oh my goodness. He's actually pre-leveled to 7 and can start rolling next turn for the Caitlyn Jace Battle Academia line. And he also got dropped a belt and a vest, which is also very nice as well. Soju levels to 7 at the last second, which I think is fine. If he chooses to reroll at 7 for like the Caitlyn Jace, you lose 4 gold, which is, it's definitely not 0, but also not the end of the world. So given how rich he is, I think that's okay. And it's just like a free level because he's not losing any interest, right? He ends up slamming Sunfire, keeping the sword open and not making a Stairs Gauge. This is because he knows that he, no matter what, is going to need something like Sunfire Cape to play the game. And sword open is still very flexible. Yes, he could make a Stairs Gauge, but again, this is just how he stays open and flexible and not so committed that he can't pivot out into something else. Taking a look at his augments again, we have Item Collector, Teacher's Council, and Golemify. Item Collector is something that has no value right now. You have 2 items. It's also going to be gold subscription, so you're not getting like more items. I like Item Collector when it's a lot of items already, like you get a huge item opener, like 5 components, maybe component anvils, or you also know that you will get more items just because of the way the game's going to flow. So I think this is something that gets better over time, but right now on 3-2 is when it's weakest, so I'm not a big fan of it. Teacher's Council, it's not particularly really useful here, and we're not trying to splash in other different mentors either. So I think this is an augment that just doesn't have a place right now in the current metagame, but maybe in future patches. And Golemify is something you could play. It is also something that's theoretically better when you are going for a level 8 comp because you want to roll for the 4 cost in the next stage, and you are lacking frontline. So it's really good for something like a sorcerer comp, for example. But it's a huge tax on your economy because you have to refill everything that you basically spent for the golem. So it's not really conducive for his reroll strategy if he wants to go into a reroll line. He rolls 1 and 2, and he gets another one and a golden quest. Another one. This one is, it's kind of like item grab bag, except one of the items you're going to get. And this is a lot better when you haven't slammed items and you know that you need a repeat of it because, maybe you just need redundancy of items. Like, I think another one is probably really good in a composition like Edgelords because Samira and Volibear both need a bunch of swords. Like, Samira needs IE and Flail. Volibear needs IE and Flail as well. So when you are playing like another one, you can probably go into that. but it's a little bit on the rare side. I think this augment is just pretty situational, but he does give you one component and he could slam something. Golden Quest is really appealing, and spoiler alert, this is what he picks for his Fast 9. And it's actually like a weaker Golden Quest than usual because he actually already leveled to 7. Had he not actually leveled to 7, he would have had, what, something like an 80, 90 gold, and the Golden Quest would have been an insane pickup here. But he already had pre-leveled and leveled over even to win that fight, so this Golden Quest is a little bit slowed down. However, he's still really rich in the grand scheme of things. Like, this is a way higher gold count than he normally is on a lot of games, and it's gold subscription. He's going to get further gold. So I think this is actually the perfect spot to take something like Golden Quest. Well, maybe not perfect because he pre-leveled the turn before, but this is still one of the ideal scenarios where you can take something like Golden Quest. He's also really high in HP, so even if he loses the rest of the stage, he's still going to be somewhere in like the 60s and 50s, which is totally fine to play a 2-star 5-cost cash out and find a way to pivot and transition. Okay, Golden Quest it is. And funny enough, with Golden Quest, it's going to basically be another time skip. He's just basically going to AFK, not spend his gold, and try his best to kill as many units as possible while figuring out what his level 9 should actually be. Now, one thing about Golden Quest is it doesn't mean that just because you have to get to 165, it doesn't mean that you can't spend your gold buying units in the shop to temporarily get strong, because you can always sell those later on. And so he's, buying things like the Cassante and playing the Cassante. And I think that's really smart because it doesn't matter when you get to 165 as long as you get it. So he could sell a bunch of units, get that big burst of gold at 165, and then level and spend his gold accordingly. So that's a tip about Golden Quest if you have not played it before. By the way, he actually won this fight, which is also insane. He queued into the calculated loss player. That actually is another layer of maybe why Golden Quest is even good pick, because he has also the lose streak player still in his pool. So he gets one free life that he knows against that player, which adds to the power of Golden Quest, because if you get more lives, that gives you more time to transition to your level 9 board with 5 costs. Let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit, because we know Soju's next few turns all the way until probably 4-2, where he's going to be able to cash out the 165. That's probably going to be when he actually gets anything going for his Golden Quest. So we could probably just fast forward and see what he ends up picking off Carousel here. Now, the nice thing about Soju's spot is he didn't slam that Stairs Gauge, right? Remember, we talked about how he could have slammed Stairs Gauge, played around the vest, maybe go for like Titans or something like that, and that's like best in slot Jace. But he didn't do that, and the advantage of like not doing that is that he didn't actually commit to items that are going to be hard to use later on. So now he has the versatility of Shojin plus an open sword. And when you're playing Golden Quest, it's actually really important to keep your items flexible, because you just have to adapt to whatever 5 cost you get. And there's a big range of them, right? If you get something like Yone, which is not a good 5 cost, that's very different from Seraphine, which is also not a good 5 cost, but it's also very different than Twisted Fate and Varus, who are 2 of the best 5 costs. So those are like that's the kind of range that you have to play around, and they all use different items. That's kind of going back to why for something like this Golden Quest spot is really strong, because he's very open and he can play and flex between the lines here. Okay, sadly, this is not that good of a loss. He's going up against a level 8 player, and he took a 7-unit loss. So the past few fights kind of been going what we've expected, which is, he's getting clobbered, but he shouldn't be getting any free wins here. While we have an opportunity to scout, we can take a look at other people who have rolled already. This is level 850. Oh my goodness, this Karma 2 player, level 850. This is the Prodigy player, level 8, rolled down already. This is the other Prodigy player, level 8 and rolled. This guy is also trying to go for level 9. Actually, I just realized that Jedi is also going for Varus Fast 9 as well, trying to contest Soju. We have another Sorcerer player here as well, although he has Infinity Edge slammed. Saint Vicious still has the crew going on. And then we have a Varus already for Swiss Beats. So this is actually going to be a contested Fast 9 situation here for Soju. And he's going to slam the Infinity Edge already preemptively, knowing that he's just basically going to try to play around Varus the best he can here. He could also slam Even Shroud right now, but I don't think that's going to like lead to killing any units. And he knows that next turn he's going to get Golden Quest anyways, because 140, he's going to be at like the high 150s. You just sell everything that isn't Cassante and Janna. And then you should be able to get the Golden Quest proc. So he's just going to react off of it. It would be a really bad situation where if he committed to Even Shroud and then he played a bunch of AP units and he needs things like the cloak and the belt for other things. All right, this is going to be a really hard turn. A lot of people are contesting him. But, he's keeping some of the core units we talked about, like the Janna, like the Cassante, having those protectors in, and he should be good to go. And he's also just so friggin' rich. It's actually crazy how much gold is in this lobby right now. Now, we don't get much time to decide this augment. The number one thing about Golden Quest is you have to go quickly, so I hope he doesn't spend too much time on this. But let's break it down as fast as we can. Noble Sacrifice is something that actually is pretty good for Fast 9, only because it scales with how many units are on your board. The more allies you have on the board, the more value that you get off of it because it gives your whole team a buff. So it's actually okay, but I would say that the value itself is not that high. So I think it's an okay augment that you could think about for combat. And right now I would say that he's thinking about items and combat because he has econ, and this is considered to be like items and econ, I guess. So he's looking for combat to kind of round out his augments here. Salvage Bin is an item augment that actually could be pretty good. I will say something about Fast 9 is if you don't have the items for the 5 cost, it doesn't matter if you hit them. So Salvage Bin gives a maximum flexibility. The downside of Salvage Bin is that it is really, really, really easy to get dizzy and get super lost and mess up your turns. And he does have 51 HP, but I think this is asking for trouble. Like, I think this is one of those things where we know he's streaming. He's been streaming for a long time. I don't know if he has the mental acuity to actually do Salvage Bin without, I just like having everything explode. So it's a high risk, pretty medium reward. I wouldn't say it's like super amazing here. And he doesn't even know what his 5 cost is. So I think Salvage Bin is probably a little bit too much here. Climb the Ladder is good for verticals like 8 Soul Fighter, 7 Academia, 8 Star Guardian. We're not playing that, so we can skip it. Looks like he decides to roll all 3. Tons of stats is generically okay. I actually think this is kind of like the reigning gold of combat augments. It doesn't look that impressive, but it's just nice and just get a lot of stats. Plot armor is pretty good with specific types of composition that want to be more defensive. I think it's a fine combat augment as well that's defensive. Tons of stats is more well-rounded. Plot armor is more defensive. And Water Lotus is actually offensive and also gives his whole team crit, which is kind of nice. Not to mention that this has the ability to maybe help him if he's trying to go for like Varus, for example, because the way this play he's slamming for Shojin and Nvidia Edge kind of hints that he's going for Varus. And that's pretty nice to be able to get his cast up again. Okay, so Water Lotus it is, and we're going to sell everything to a clean 165. Gets the Varus, which is the best possible scenario. Although I will say the thing about Golden Quest is a lot of the times the artifact is not actually best in slot for that unit. So I don't think he's going to be playing Sniper's Focus on the Varus. Instead, he's going to probably look for someone else. He has a Gwen, for example. He can put Sniper's Focus on the Gwen. And he's not that rich. You can see that he like went to 9, rolled, and already is kind of lacking even just the 9 units to play at the moment. He's going to sell the Gwen. He has Twisted Fate. He has the Zyra. He doesn't have any semblance of frontline right now. So it's probably going to be a loss for his transition turn. Okay, he puts the Sniper's Focus on Twisted Fate, choosing a power-up here for Varus. Attack Expert, Essence Share, and Hyperactive. Varus is not really about like the attack speed. Essence Share is not really useful, plus the 2 nearest allies are Ziggs and Jinx, so it's probably Attack Expert here. It just makes the Deathblade hit a little bit harder. Almost like half of a Radiant Deathblade. Not really. And it looks like he should actually be able to get this fight win. Ooh, just a narrow loss. Okay, that's not actually that big of a deal, though, because he's pretty close to stabilizing if he can hit Twisted Fate 2 and support his front line. Oh, and he hits a Twisted Fate 2 immediately afterwards as well, and the Jarvan, which is a great pickup. Okay, so now the core is pretty much put together here. He's also thinking about these splash units, right? For example, he's putting Ziggs in over Jinx because he had the crew. But the crew is just not really that valuable. The crew gives 5% health and attack speed for his Twisted Fate, so it's not particularly very good. So he sells that. Instead, activates Sniper for his Varus, which he thinks is more important. He also has Crystal Gambit activated, which is nice because the next couple rounds, he's going to need every little bit of gold that he can get. He's going up against another player who went to Fast 9, also has Varus. They must be really upset that he also got Varus. Classic K3 Soju high roll. Oh, wait, this guy's level 8. Just kidding. I thought he was level 9. And scouting around, looks like Jedi also has a Varus and went Fast 9 as well. 3 Varus players in the lobby. That is so unusual. I took this VOD because I saw that he had gone for Fast 9 Varus. But now that I'm looking at it, this is a really unusual game. You should not be expecting 3 people to be playing like a sniper Varus line in your average lobbies. It's very, very unusual. Just putting it out there. Okay, Soju, I believe, doesn't have any open components, but he can take max gold here. I think taking the Seraphine for the 5 gold is really valuable. Plus, I don't think he actually has all of his frontline items squared away, so taking a cloak to just get something defensive is really good. Okay, he's going to go and roll down. Still no Cassante 2 and no actual upgrades for anything else, really. So he's just Varus 2 and Twisted Fate 2. He's going to slam Stoneplay here, and this is just the best possible thing that he can make. We didn't really talk about it very much, but Unstoppable is the best power-up that you can get for Cassante. In general, Unstoppable is just probably the best overall frontline power-up that you can get in the game currently. He's going up against the Edgelord Volibear with... Is that 2 Volibears? No, I think that's body change. Okay, so there's a second Volibear, but it's not actually. It's the Braum. And that actually is going to make it really tough, too. That means, you know, Braum is contested as well. So as much as, like, he high-rolled the Varus... A lot of this game has friction around a lot of the units that he wants. And so it's about how he's able to adapt to that. And I think positioning is going to matter a lot. That was a fight where you saw kind of the Volibear, like, being on this side has sort of its risk because Unstoppable jumps here. And you saw that the Volibear thought about jumping onto the Varus. And that is one thing about, like, this composition is that you don't want to have your front line abandon your back line because it's very easy for it to go really wrong. Actually, what happened there? I thought the Volibear was supposed to jump on the Varus. Okay, definitely a little bit of a weird targeting moment. There's a lot of those this set, actually. I feel like Power Up has so many weird interactions in terms of combat. Okay, he's going to open the chest, and this is the value of the Crystal Gambit to get a little bit extra resources. Gets a sword, which is nice for his item economy, so that way he can go for 3 items on Twisted Fate. He not happy with his fruit with critical threat, so he rolls it again. Out of all these, it's probably Gathered Force because Sky Piercer, he already has that covered through his Even Shroud. And we talked about Hyperactive already as well. Still not happy. And has Doom Barrage. Doom Barrage is a Varus-specific power-up that's pretty solid. I don't know if it's his best one, but it's one of the good ones, I would say. It looks like he's going against a Soric player, and this person is win streaking, looking really good. And that Doom Barrage is coming up really huge. You can see the difference of that power-up. And that power-up actually doing a lot more for this Varus than something like the Attack Expert is massive. Okay, looks like the other sniper players are actually relatively stable as well. In fact, I believe all the Varus players are 2, 3, and 4. And another Varus is being picked up by these players as well. Oh, and they're hitting their Cassante and the Zyra too. You know, Jedi is actually playing a 5 sniper variation, so he's not going to be holding too many more of Soju's units, but it's going to be really hard to hit Cassante. 2 other players had Cassante 2 already. So, and not to mention that things like the Battle Academia player wants Cassante. So how is Soju going to deal with the fact that all of his units are contested? Besides the fact that he hit a Varus 2 and it's supposed to hit Fate 2 as well. Okay, 20 gold. We're going to have to roll again. Here comes the gold subscription. Braum holding on to a bunch of 4 costs within the pool. Finds the Swain so he can finally go in as well. Man, Twisted Fate every other shop. I feel like he's rolled past like 6 or 7 Twisted Fates. He's going to think about positioning first and then open his anvil for items. I think he's probably thinking about Rage Blade on Twisted Fate plus another item. He's going to go for Gunblade and then try to go for frontline items. Very, very balanced. This is nice. Soju also positioned this Grasping route, which ends up being really good. I said that this was a Prodigy player, but I actually misspoke. This is actually the Caitlyn Jace reroll player. And he actually put a Grasping route plant here to actually intercept the Caitlyn ×2. And that actually stops Brawny of TFT from being able to snipe the corner units. A lot of people talk about counterplay to Caitlyn, but having the Zyra here and able to resummon the plants just stops the shot from being able to get through immediately. Now, I won't say that this happens every single time you play Zyra, but I think that his setup specifically makes a lot of sense to position like that. And that was a very, very clutch anti-Caitlyn interception. The Varus players are not dying, by the way. One of the things that is probably a glimmer of hope for Soju is maybe all the Varus players die, or one of them dies, so that way he can hit the rest of his board. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case here. Maybe Stygzor dies, because I believe he's holding 2 Cassantes, and that is 10 Cassantes out of the pool. If Stygzor died, then 2 more Cassantes goes back in. Okay, this is the mirror match versus the other Varus player. I mean, they're playing like Jinx with 2 items and only Varus 1, so we should be favored. But look at, by the way, how much mana Varus gains back with the fact that he has like Doom Barrage, so the arrows cost less, and he's able to get some mana back. So when they're refunding him and everything like that, this Varus just shoots a million arrows and just does so much damage to the board. This is why Varus is really strong, and he's holding an extra Varus to deny the other Varus player. Going up against the crew player right now, and I think this crew is pretty strong, but I think the problem with crew is that it's trying to stall out versus a composition that also does a lot of damage and burst. So I think it's going to be kind of close, but it does seem to favor Soju a lot. And I just don't think crew can actually keep up late game with all these like fast 9 boards. Okay, we're coming up on the last couple of fights in this game because everyone's really low HP. Soju's probably looking for just more defensive items because he already has 2 of his backline carries. We talked about itemizing your duo carry for fast 9. He just needs more tank items now just to stall out. Hits a Zyra 2. Gets the Sivir off the Rogue Captain. And he's very, very close to hitting everything. Hits a Braum 2. Can sell the Sivir to get there. Oh, actually sells the Varus. Oh, interesting. I wonder why he held Sivir. Oh, his opponent actually has 8 karmas. So he has to actually be really careful not to let his opponent hit karma 3. Okay, and by killing him, he's not going to hit karma 3. Nicely done. Not something that I paid attention to. And looks like it's going to be a top 4 for K3 Soju. Can he do a little bit more here? And looks like he's going to roll down to see if he can hit the rest of his units. Finally hits the Cassante 2, which is so important for this composition. And I think that's probably going to be it. I think he's too strong relative to the other Fast 9 players. The only person that can compete with him is probably the Mirror. But, you know, I don't think that he has as much going on for him because he's just playing a lower value board. 1 item on TF. I guess he does have a Zyra 2 with items. So maybe. But I think that's probably going to be the top 2 comps right now for 1 and 2 in this lobby. Wait a second. He just lost. Ooh. Okay. Maybe there's actually a contender. I thought Soju had this in the bag, but the Edgelord player actually showed a little bit of teeth. Soju probably looked for another frontline item. You could probably take Warmogs here or Titans, and both are acceptable items on Braum. Braum, a misconception about Braum is that he's actually like a tank, but he's actually supposed to be like a fighter, so you want to give him like things like Stairs Gauge and Titans and Bloodthirster. So that's actually a good heads up play. Looks like he's going to go up against the Mirror here. Sorry that I actually fast forward a little bit faster than that, but I think he just has more value than the other guy because like I said, the other guy doesn't have as many upgrades. So this guy is actually greeting and trying to get to level 10 and trying to cap by going to 10 and then hitting 1 layer over his opponent. Also worth noting that he's like frontlining Janna, for example, because he just needs more frontline since he was lacking compared to Soju. And Soju's now doing the same thing as well. Like he went to 10 and played the Rise for a strategist and, you know, just getting a little bit more shield value off of the strategist because this Rise is not going to deal damage. Okay, Soju's going against the Ghost of the Edgelord player. So watching this fight between the Edgelords and the Varus player. Looks like the Edgelord player is dead, and it is the showdown that we thought it would be, which is the 2 Varus players. Soju rolls down, looks for the Rise. Looks like Swiss Beats is going for Lee Sin. Although I don't really know what he wants to play Lee Sin for. Is he going to play for like a Juggernauts or Executioner? I guess he's just trying to look for value. Just play like a 2-star 5 cost. But again, 2-star 5 costs don't do that much unless you have items on them. And I would say in this fight that Soju just probably still has a little bit too much value. He has 3 items and 2F. I actually really don't like how his opponent only has 2 items on his carries. Like items multiply off each other. So if you're stacking 1 unit with 2 items and another unit with 2 items, that's less efficient than stacking 1 unit with 3 items. Because even though, you know, maybe he's not optimizing for their items, like maybe he doesn't want like Shojin and Red Buff and Morel in the same unit, it's still better to have 3 items on your carries in that sense. So I think item quality and also the way things are distributed is just favoring Soju a little too much. And I think this should be the final fight of the game. I mean, we do have Jewel Gauntlet. We did hit Braum too, but just not enough items. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Soju has way balanced 4 units, all itemized. And we kind of have like 2 items, 1.5 items here, 2 items here. Just a little bit too little. Not to mention that I think that Soju also just has like, you know, the positional advantage here. All right, and just like that, it is a forced. GG's. So there you have it, the Fast 9 board that I think is the strongest comp in the game. If you can get there, it just caps so high. There are a couple things that it could lose to, but you can see it dealt with Caitlyn Jace just fine, Sorcerer's just fine, and apparently the 2 other mirrors. So very, very powerful, and I think it's still going to be around next patch as well. It should just be strong all set long. So make sure to learn it if you can, and if you're in a spot where you have a bunch of gold, go for this board. Congratulations, Soju. Make sure to check out his channel and watch him compete in the TPC in the coming weeks. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave something in the comments below. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.